All. Thank you for joining this Catalyst workshop. And we are particularly privileged this evening to have with us Lucy Van Smith. And Lucy, first and foremost, even before I continue, we would want to thank you very much for your time this evening. And as protocol demands, feel free to use the chat box, share your comments and your thoughts and your ideas, your reflections as the conversation gets started. And this evening, the theme is on storytelling for impact. And I believe that almost all of us here are shaped by stories, and we have stories to tell one way or the other. Our lives are woven up, and made up significantly by stories that have shaped us, stories that we ourselves have to tell based on our experiences. And so I believe that it's going to be a very impactful session. And once again, welcome to the space. Just to give a bit of introduction to our speaker, Lucy is a former TV producer who has traveled worldwide for NBC News and made TV documentaries for Canadian broadcasting on writers, including Jean Le Coeur. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that right because I think it's French. Maybe Cynthia will be in a better position to give me some tutorials after this. Martin Amis and Ian McEwan. She is now an award-winning author with her debut novel, The Hurton, winning the inaugural Bath Children's Novel Award. And Lucy's nonfiction debut, a writer's journal workbook, became an instant bestseller, leading to her latest commission, The Creative Path, out in 2025. And apart from that, she also runs workshops and coaches individual writers to help them rediscover their creative passion and writing confidence. Such an interesting profile. And Lucy, we are glad to have you. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's a lovely introduction. Thank you, Lawrence. I'm just thrilled to be here. And I firstly wanted to say huge congratulations to everyone at EduSpots today. I looked through your report and I must admit on my research for you, for all of you, I have nothing to say to you that you don't already know. And let me just, I'll share the screen, but is that your, I think that's okay. So what I normally have to do for writers, particularly in the West, I don't have to do for you guys because you actually know it. So in the UK, when I give a talk, there's a huge amount of anxiety, and I have to tell writers to come out of their head, which live in the West, and get into our body and into our heart. And I don't need to teach you that because I know you know it. This is what the book's about, and I'm going to come back through it in the course of the sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that thing at the bottom, in the course of the talk, but this is my absolute takeaway. So in my book, intention is everything, and it increases your success tenfold. And what you have and what you're doing is a very, very clear intention to be catalysts, which is absolutely extraordinary. And the one thing that I was going to talk to you about, or I thought you might be interested in knowing, I know your culture is an expert on already. So we have in the West story structure. It very much comes from Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. And I just thought, oh, I wonder what your culture is. You have the identical structure in storytelling in Ghana. I mean, it is so sophisticated. It's incredible. But more importantly, to be a master storyteller, you need, as I said, to come with heart. And story, as Lawrence said earlier, is a sort of fabric, a tapestry of our life. And again, in Ghana, you have such enormous skills at storytelling. You are literally master storytellers, and I should be learning from you, not the other way around. So what we look at in story, it's structure, and I'll give you the story structure in a second, but it was really to hammer home and reflect back to you what I see in you is that the voice that you use when you tell stories. I've looked at all your videos. you're just masters at sharing your passion for what you're doing, communicating to the children. I was thinking, oh, I'll give them some leadership tips that are really advanced here in England. Nope, I'm already seeing them popping up on your website. You seem to know everything. I mean, I just wish you were teaching us in England, because we have so much to learn from you. You should be so, so proud, because, you know, I'm actually blown away. So let me just tell you a tiny bit about me. So story structurally is how we make sense out of life. It's what we talk about, right? This is how I made sense out of my life. So I was this very frightened little girl that you see, and I became an author. And I had problems having kids. I was a TV producer. And my little boy that you see down in the bottom was bullied at school, which is why in the next photograph, I became a parent educator, because I wanted to make the school kind. And when you support children, this little boy who's severely dyslexic, so not just a little bit, severely, and I don't know if you can see in the top picture, because mine's blocked by the faces, he's studying quantum physics at PhD level. So he went at age 8 not being able to read. I mean, barely could read, nor could Einstein at 8. In fact, Einstein couldn't speak. So what you do as teachers is just incredible. And now this little boy at university took up boxing for his mental health. He's strong, he's friendly, but it was the teachers who had the empathy in the early stages that really made the difference for him. So if you're teaching children, and this is what I would teach screenwriters, this is Hitchcock's, and it's slipped a little bit on this slide. Hitchcock had a structure. So Hitchcock was the very famous film director. And all you need for story, he would say, is a character, an obstacle, and a goal. And this is what I see in what you guys are delivering in Ghana. So a character, when you're teaching children, you can brainstorm character and they'll come up with anything from a thimble to an elephant to a professor. And in story, the structure is always, what's the goal? And your job as a writer is to stop them getting to the goal too quickly. So you put obstacles in their way. And it's a very, very simple story structure. This is an example of it. So in Star Wars, your hero, the character, is Luke Skywalker. And you always give, with obstacles, you give an internal obstacle, which could be doubt or shame or guilt. And again, you'll be seeing this in your schools with children. They'll have the internal obstacle. His goal is to save the rebels, and his inner need is to find his identity as a Jedi. And in this story, his antagonist is Darth Vader, who's his blood father, and the external obstacle is the rebellion. So one of the things I wanted to say to you, what with my severely dyslexic boy, that helped in storytelling, was we watched a lot of TV and film, and we use character, obstacle, goal. So whenever you see a character come on, he would always understand that's been specifically written, always looking, what does this character want? What's getting in their way? Who's the antagonist? And he got, in England, we have the scoring like a 9 as a top mark. So even severely dyslexic, because of his telling ability from watching TV, talking story, listening to stories. And I noticed on your website, one of the requests was to have more film clubs. And I'm just showing that this is one of the ways that's really useful for storytelling with kids. So this is, I don't know if you can see it, because I've got my
Lucy, I think you just muted yourself by mistake.
Is that okay, Kat?
Perfect, you're back.
Perfect. All right. So this is a really simple story structure, which I teach. This is a screenwriting structure. And let me see if I can just get that off without me. So this is really useful for when you're thinking about telling story or teaching story technique to a child or a young person. It always starts in this five act. It's in 3 acts, but there are 5 points. You always start in the ordinary world. So you would think about your life where you live, a village or siblings, whatever. And there's always something called an inciting incident, or another way of saying that would be a trigger event. In story, something has to happen. And then all these little rocks you see on the store on the river create energy. So that's what you want. And this is something I know in Ghana you are so good at, because I've been looking at your traditional story techniques. And one of the cool things you teach in story, in screenwriting, is your main character, who's called the protagonist, has to be an active character. Now, I know you know this in your bones, that when you tell a story, you have to be active. When you're storytelling, you engage with your audience, and it's always about that relationship. So halfway through a story, so each act, at the end of one act, you always have an event. You can never go back to who you were. So if you took this to your life, maybe an inciting incident in this story of being a catalyst would be the person you met from EduSpots, who inspired you to be someone different. And you went on this journey, and there might be obstacles. Maybe your parents didn't want you to do it. Maybe there were cultural problems, but you go forward until the point you can't turn back. And at each third of the story, you can never go back to who you were before. Structurally, midpoint in a story is always a decision. It's always that aha moment when all the obstacles are against you, everybody wants to beat you up, and you suddenly step up into being catalyst and decide, I've got this. I don't care what the obstacles are, I'm going to do it. And then in the act 3, the last act, you have more obstacles, more challenges, and then you have the climax, and the resolution is a part in a story, and I know you know this, where everybody calms down and you just tie up all the ends. But the big thing on a story, and this again will happen to catalysts, you think when you have a goal that you want something. So maybe you want to open a center up, maybe there's something specific in your goal, and it's what the character wants. But what's really important that you'll see in story a lot is the difference between what you want and what you need as a character. And the thing that fascinates me with story is it's always, who do you need to become? It's not the events, it's not your life, it's who do you, Lawrence, need to become when you have problems? And that's that story. And let me see if it's not letting me change slides, because this is at the bottom. Give me 1 sec, I've just got to move this again. So I can't see the top of this, but again, I want to share with you on this slide, what it says is to thrive when you're writing a story or your life is your approach. And in the UK and America, in fact, in the West, like I teach in American, Australia and Dublin, all sorts of places, we always have to focus a lot on your approach before you start work. So before you talk to the children or you're engaging, you always sort of take a moment to be in your body. And again, what I understand, the way you guys work, this is happening to you. You're always in your heart, you're in your body, you're thriving with your kindness. It's very inspirational, what you're doing. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is change. It's very, very difficult to change someone else, if not impossible. So in change and story technique, the hero in the past it's been a very masculine hero. It's been the soul story. In TV or film, you see it like Die Hard or Luke Skywalker. It's the soul man saving everybody. But moving forward, and again, this is the storytelling that EduSpots use, is the heroine. So the heroine story, or the heroine's journey, is like, I don't know if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, but it's when Dorothy takes everybody with her. And this is the heroine's journey. The hero saves everybody else. The heroine takes everybody on the journey with her. And this is what I'm seeing with EduSpots. And this is why I think what you're doing is so incredible, because it's very difficult to do this. I can't see it because I'm sharing this. It's cutting out the top of my screen. Anyway, I know what this slide says. It says start with heart. And again, I don't have to teach you this, because this is something that your hearts are so enormous, so wide open, so connected to nature. This is where you start. But with a lot of stories, writers I see, they start with their head, they construct the story, and then they try and pump life into the character. But when you, whether you're making a baby or anything, the first human cell is the heart cell. So when you want to create a story, you always start with a heart. You're always thinking of, what am I trying to say here? What do I want to do? But it's your heart that you're starting with. So this is a very sophisticated, I thought I'd just play a game with you guys. Pixar have a formula for emotion. So when you tell a story, the most important thing you are doing is creating a relationship with your readers, with your people that you want to bring on with Catalysts. And the formula, don't worry, it's very, very simple, but it made me laugh because, again, this is not something that you need to know, because I have a strong feeling you know it. So the formula really means this: you're always looking for the emotional core, the heart of a story, and that means empathy. That means when you create an emotional heart, your reader or your student can identify with the character, with you. So when you're telling a story, you always want to be very authentic and put the heart of you in your story to create that empathy with your whoever it is. They also found that recognition, a student, and I know you know this as great teachers, the reader wants to see something of themselves in you, which is why when you show them a love story or something terrible has happened, that helps them recognize themselves, because we all go through those same feelings. But P2, pity, is very, very important in storytelling. And Pixar, who make all the big animated movies that you see, when we have hardship, when somebody is beaten by their father, or they want to be a dancer and they're not allowed to dance, whatever the obstacles, you really heap those on. And in story structure, you do it in rising tension, you do more and more and more. But in the thing that's very important, particularly when you use animation, is to be human. So your character has to be seen to have human qualities. So even a robot, you'll see a tender moment that we're in the story and we can identify. And then escalating states is when things get more and more bigger problems. And that equals motivation. It's the why of your story. So one of the one I missed out, but again, I think you know this one, is admiration. So we love to admire someone. So your students will want to admire you. We admire people that are good at something. You could be courageous. They might make a decision. I'm going to help you. I'm going to do something brave. When you're writing a story, one of the exercises that's great is to think, what skills do you wish you had? And you give them to your character. But again, in your own story, when you're writing it, you start looking at what values really matter to you. With my son in a school that was his primary school, that it was very, had very high standards of education, but it wasn't very kind. To me, kindness was much more important. And you're always asking this question: who do you want to become? The one thing that you see in story is, can you see the top and the bottom of this slide? Because it's obstructed for me, but can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is it's just one of these great simple things, that your life is the choice, moment by moment, thought by thought, belief by belief, that you make. But character and plot is the choices your characters make. And in a story, when you're writing drama, you get your characters to make really bad choices. In fact, often the best way to make a story is, what's the worst choice you can make right now? And that will give you quite a good story. But the other way for you is always to look at, what's the best choice I can make right now? I wanted to, because seriously, when I looked into research, the culture, it's so sophisticated in Ghana, in your literature, your traditional storytelling. It's so amazing the way that you have this interaction with the speaker and the audience. You have songs, you have them engaged. You have such an advanced form of storytelling. The only thing I thought maybe that would be helpful, or I could offer, and again, in leadership, you might know this. When I was researching the book, when you do change, transformational change, there's always 4 steps. And I did huge research on this, and I kept saying the same thing and thinking, this is so funny, because this would mean storytellers are going to be the best at this. So the first thing you do in the 4 steps, the first one is a safe space. And for a writer, the most unsafe space is their head. So I just want you to think about that. But when you're trying to create change for a classroom, and I know as great teachers, this is what you'd automatically be doing, you create a safe space. But this is what people are paying tens of thousands of pounds for with Tony Robbins to learn this. And I know you know it. So I find it really funny. The second change in transformation, the breakthrough. So again, they make a big drama of this, your breakthrough, but it comes when you identify your old story. So with your students, you would be noticing or encourage them to see what do they believe about themselves. It might be an old belief like, I can't do this, girls can't interrupt men, girls can't be scientists, whatever it is. When you identify that story, and one of the ways you do that, you take that story river, and you can start breaking down in your first 7 years. You can look at points that think, oh, this turned this obstacle created that. And you're always asking the question, who did I become? And when you notice your words and your beliefs and your actions, the transformation comes when you write your new story. And again, for school, the potential you have with school children and students is they come at this with a beginner's mindset. They have that awe and wonder. And as we grow up, we lose that. And it's something, again, I'm seeing in Ghana, in the EduSpots, this passion for what you're doing, this delight, the beginner's mind, like it's childlike. It doesn't mean childish, it just means wonder and awe and enthusiasm. And it's something I always have to tell writers to come back to, particularly authors. And one of the reasons for that is, this is the last step, the 4 steps. The 4th step is you take action on your news story. So your news story might be that you decide to be a catalyst, and then you start taking action on that. And again, you'll be asking those questions from story. Who do I need to become to be a catalyst? Those kind of things. This is something called the Examine, which I find really useful. It's a very simple technique, but it's from a Jesuit from a couple of 1,000 years ago who was a knight but had a very bad accident. And he started the Jesuit community. And the one thing when his priests were very busy, he always said to them, if you do nothing else and you don't have time to pray every night, you reflect, what's one thing that takes you towards God? In our case, for catalysts, we use that word as a goal. And you would reflect on, what's the one thing I did today that took me to being a catalyst? And then you'd look at, what's the one thing that took me away from being a catalyst, or whatever your goal is. And it's such a simple, but it's such a powerful technique. You simply do more of the first step that you identified that day. What took you before? Maybe it was being very welcoming. Maybe it was having confidence in yourself. Maybe it was seeing, like a catalyst sees something in someone else, and you think, I can make you, or not make you, I can help you see how wonderful you are. But the Examine is a really, really useful tool because it's so simple, and you can break it down and use it in almost every step of your life and every step of your work. You're always asking, what's the one thing, just one thing. And I can't see, I think it says know yourself. On the book, one of the core principles of absolutely anything is you cannot change other people until you change yourself. In fact, you cannot change them. You change yourself, and you are the mentor, you're the example, your energy goes out. So if you decide to be a kind person, if you decide to be a wiser person, compassionate, to see somebody that doesn't have your opportunity or education with enormous compassion, once you start knowing you really know who you are, you have this massive, massive advantage. And one of the techniques I use in the writer's journal is something called the naming game. Because again, for a lot of people, it's very hard to know who you are, because the statistic is 75, 90% of what you believe. They aren't even your own ideas. They've come from your culture. By the time you're 35, I think it's more to 90%. It's really shocking. So it takes a lot to look inside and examine a belief and think, I don't buy into this. This is not for me. So the naming game would help you. It's a very good way. If you're teaching children to write, it grounds them very calmly straight away. You just look up and tell them, what do you see? You see a candle, you see a photograph, you see a little angel. And you're always, you take it step by step into different fields. You'll start naming, what emotion is this? And I meant to put it in the slide, but it's in the other presentation. There's 4 ways that you look at emotions that are helpful. 3 are unhelpful, 1's helpful. When you, most of us will repress an emotion. So we think women shouldn't, little girls should be nice and not angry. So we suppress that anger. We might repress it. We might, when we've done that, we might vent it and lash out with our words. But when you're a writer, one of the things the naming girl helps you do is to notice the emotion, and you just allow it to pass through you, and it takes seconds. So if you're angry at something, you just sit back for a moment, think, oh, I'm angry. You might understand the trigger event. Maybe you'll felt like with me, my mother hit me a lot as I was a child. But it's a very useful technique to start naming and identifying and just letting things go. You don't have to vent it. You don't have to repress it. You just embrace every part of you, the shadow of you, the hero in you. It's a really, really useful technique. It's called the sewing game. So I can't see what this slide says. I wonder if there's a way I can do this. Workshop yourself. Okay, so when you're doing a creative writing technique, when you want to be a writer, a creative, and that this applies again to being a catalyst, is you're always asking yourself, what do you think? So instead of looking up the tree and looking at somebody else and being told what to think, you're always checking in with yourself, thinking, does this sound right to me? Does this feel right? You might read a piece of writing, you might look at a film, but you're always checking in with yourself. You're always building up. How does this make you feel? What do you think about this story? One of the mistakes I regret with my son Archie was that when he asked me a question like, Mum, like yesterday he asked, do I look good in this shirt? I wish more. I always said to him, what do you think? Because this is a muscle we need with young students. We need them to know who they are. And it's something that's exceptionally difficult, certainly in the West, where we're so overtaught. It's very difficult to know what you feel. We're disconnected. And again, what I'm seeing in storytelling in Ghana, I don't think this is such an issue for you. This is a very simple thing in neuroscience. There's only 2 things that we're always doing in life. We avoid pain. So that's where always you're either going to avoid pain or you move towards pleasure. And we do more to avoid pain. So you will run faster from a tiger than you will to go and meet a friend. And you're always checking in with that. So there's no other, that's just in neuroscience, that's all you're doing. You're seeking pleasure with something, or you're avoiding pain. You're in writer's block, one of the things we'll avoid pain of writing, and it starts building, but I'll talk to you about that at the end if I've got time. This is, I wish you could see what this is saying. So this is useful when in the West, it's very difficult because we're disconnected from ourselves and how we feel. We use patterns of behavior. They're called archetypes. And one way of thinking of this, we use them all the time without knowing it. So you might say you're a teacher is an archetype. Your mother is an archetype. You might see a geek is a bully is an archetype. So we see these archetypes. When we want to change, one of the first things you might do is identify the archetypes. We all share 4, and one of them we all have is the victim. And you can hear the language of the victim in storytelling. It's the blame, it's shame, it's I ought to have this, it's not fair. What it does whenever you use that language, it makes you powerless. So just taking out, blaming other people, it's not fair, I deserve. When you take those words out, your response ability. And when you take the victim into the story structure, you suddenly can have fun because you know obstacles are going to come at you. And you know, in storytelling, we love our characters. We're going to give them a lot of problems because it will make them become something of themselves. The child archetype is something we all have. Now, particularly with women, and I suspect this might be the case in Ghana. I don't want to generalize, but it's certainly true of writers. Many of us have the invisible child archetype. So this child archetype, when they're little and we carry it with us, it's not that we lose these archetypes there. The child just becomes a grown-up child with us, is the invisible child. So this is a child that's been dimmed down by their siblings or their parents. They've been shamed. They're not allowed to be who they are. And one thing that happens, I see with authors is, and it might happen with your catalysts, is when they become visible, all the anxiety from the past comes up with them. So you might see someone suddenly successful, but the trauma of the past being made to feel invisible, to dim down their stilts, they might not be able to see who they are really. And I see this a lot with writers. I see it a lot with women writers. And it is something I would think as a catalyst, you could really help people see themselves, because I can promise you they don't see their brilliance. The saboteur is something that we all have. It's another archetype, and it's not negative or it's neutral, but what it does is keep you safe in what's known. So a classic example of that would be at the Oscars. Will Self went and punched somebody and he got banned from the Oscars. And what that's about is, you know, he started off quite a poor young man. And just at the center, at the height of his career, he was getting an Oscar. Nothing's bigger than that for an actor. He sabotaged himself because he'd moved too far from the shore of who he was, and it just pulls you back. So that's when you notice that archetype, that pattern of behavior in you, when you might show up late for something, you might not do the work. That is always one to watch, and you can see it in children too. You'll see it in the high achieving. Sometimes they'll sabotage something, and it's just a pattern to keep you safe. The merchant is, we also call it the prostitute, but it doesn't mean, I changed the name for it because we all negotiate our survival. So you will trade a bit of yourself for your job to be safe, to get in with people. So for instance, a people pleaser, there's always a benefit from how we behave. A people pleaser gets esteem from being liked. So when you see people that, if you notice in yourself, you're always being too nice, one of the things you'll work on in a writer's journal is just look at, I don't need esteem from someone else. I'll give that to myself. And it's all about bringing it back in. What's interesting about the addict, and if you have children that have been hit earlier in their life, the addict archetype manages trauma. So that is, you know, for me, I have a very addictive personality. So I read, luckily mine's in reading. So I'll read and it keeps me safe in my head. The perfectionist archetype is one that manages, and again, in our country, this is very big. It manages shame. So you're never good enough. So it looks like a positive. You'll never stop working. You're always immaculate. But it's something to look at, because what it's actually doing, it's a coping mechanism for shame. So I just thought I'd show you some of those patterns because they're kind of useful. So when you're, you know, again, working with young students, it's more powerful to bring a different archetype in. So I have very strongly the mother archetype, and I turn into a mother, I'm a warrior. And I know in Ghana that it actually means warrior king. So you have this very strongly created identity in your country. But when you're giving a job maybe for someone to do that they find difficult, you would actually call in a different archetype. You might call in their magician, you might call in their king, and you can see their body language change. And you're always asking, what part of you right now has authority over you? These are something also very useful to think about. I use them for writing characters. Again, Tony Robbins has taken this from Maslow. We have a hierarchy of needs. And interestingly, with entrepreneur, 75% choose two that they can't control. So they choose certainty, they want to feel safe, and significance. They want to feel important. But both of those needs, if you're chasing those two needs, you're giving your power away to someone else. And what I see, again, what you're doing in EduSpots, which I can see will make you a much happier life, is your growing and its contribution and its connection. And when you can become familiar and comfortable with uncertainty and variety, and we also have a need for change and variety, you'll suddenly become quite powerful. So these meeting a need, you can see it when somebody's being very difficult with you. Maybe an official is saying, no, you can't do something. The odds are he's meeting his need for significance. And once you recognize the pattern, it gives you a lot more empowerment how to get around them. So I can't see what this is saying because it's blocked off at the top. But I think just taking you back into the book, why do we journal? Why do we reflect on things? Because we don't learn from experience. We only learn when we stop and reflect on it. If you don't do the inner work yourself, you will take a cultural belief that somebody is telling you who you can be, that you can't be a teacher, you can't be a professor, you can't go to America, whatever it is, which is why when you start doing the work and you choose your dreams, and I loved your dream board that I saw in one of your presentations, it's very helpful. So in the writer's journal, in the West, and I'm not sure this, I'd love to ask you afterwards if this is such an issue for you, but in the West, anxiety is the biggest issue I see with writers. And they don't know how to self-regulate. They have the inner child, the invisible child archetype. They are very traumatized. A writer is not someone who had a very, very happy, normal childhood. They've been traumatized. They're very alert. They're hypervigilant. They're always watching. They have a need to express themselves. And they need a lot of tender care. And it's been extraordinary working with them. And the 3-part structure, the first thing that we do is create a safe space. But first I wanted to say, and again, this is what I would teach in England, and I don't need to teach you guys because I see it on your website everywhere. In a journal, you're always asking a great question. And the best question I have right now is, how can you have fun, more fun right now? And it could be like, how could you have more fun listening to a workshop when you've had a long day, and you might wiggle, you might laugh. You're always thinking in every moment, right now, how can I have more fun? And it could be just tidying up your desk. You're always thinking in that sort of way. And that intention starts sending you on your goal. So whatever you're doing, this is my favorite question. How can I have more fun right now? So annoying. I can't see the top of this. I wonder if I can get, sorry, give me 1 second. I'll just see if I can move that somewhere.
So always
else.
ask a great question.
Okay, thanks, Kat. Thank you so much. So that's what I'm saying. Always ask a great question. So in a journal and in life, you're always asking, who are you? This is what, and where, these are the journalist questions. They're very useful. They're so simple. Where are you? That might mean, where are you in your life? Where are you geographically? And this question, what do you want? And for some young people, they won't be able to answer this question because they've never been given the choice. They don't think they can choose who they can be or what they want. And this is a question when you don't know, that you just keep asking. It was very difficult for me to know, what do I want? And then you always ask, why do you want this? Because often we want something like a big flash car. And actually what we want to do is meet one of those needs I mentioned to you earlier. You might want to meet the need for growth, or you might need meeting the need for significance. And when you know the reason you want the car is for significance, and you know that means you're giving your power to somebody else to give you approval. And then when you have a goal, like for the catalyst, you're always asking, how do you get there? And you keep asking this question, who do you need to become to do those things? Right, now I've got the problem. I can't, will it let me? No, it won't let me do that. Ah, there you go, hang on. So I was going to give you a tiny bit neuroscience too, because just to, your brain is a 2-part system. So often in the West, we push, effort. And I spoke a couple of seconds to Kat at the start. We have over-examined the kids. We're feeding too much information. We haven't changed the system of education. But you don't learn when you effort. You learn in the rest play. So it's very, very important that when you work hard, you must play. and I can see this again on your websites. I know you know this. So it's a super useful thing. And I've just got my son a guitar so that when he's working in the lab building a quantum computer, he's playing on the guitar. And this is how Einstein had his brilliant breakthroughs, his aha moments, all those things came when he was resting. So just on creative blocks, and again, I'm not sure these are the same issues, but this one's really interesting to me. When I was in the garden writing the book, and I was seeing people with problems, like their creative block, they had stopped writing and stopped being creative and stopped believing in themselves. And I was cleaning out the sink in my garden, and I put my hand in and pulled out a bunch of rubbish that was stuck in there, and all the water gushed out through the sink. And when I looked at what was in my hand, it was a lot of tiny leaves. And it wasn't one big thing that we sometimes think is stopping us making the next step. It's these tiny little things that we say to ourselves. So it could be that we'll say we're not good enough. And we think at the time it doesn't matter. But over a lifetime, whether it's little hurts, they can make you very angry. So it's, again, you go back into the book, when you notice these things, you just see it and let it go. But in the dark, when you're scared, a little thing casts a huge shadow and it becomes a very big problem. So it's always worth remembering, going back to, it's little things, it's the accumulation, it's like microdosing in negative thoughts or negative experience that cause the problem, that cause our block. So the technique for this is inner hygiene, and that's from an anthropologist called Jean Houston. But what's that I'm researching for this new book is, I had no idea how powerful our words are. We hear it all the time, but it changes your chemistry inside you. It's so important for you to notice how children and students are speaking about themselves, about someone else, your thoughts. And whenever you have, with the game I play at the moment, I catch, like a thought, like I'm not very good at organizing structure, and I just capture it and put it in a cookie jar, and just I'm slam dunking and playing with it all the time. But inner hygiene, what I noticed when I was walking in lockdown is how unconscious we are. So I was looking at this park thinking, why would someone litter a beautiful park? And I realized we're unconscious. We don't realize we're doing it. So one of the things that really helps being a writer and when you journal is you become much more of the observer. You're not judging how you think. You're just thinking, oh, I just beat myself up again. I don't need to do that. And you do it as daily practice. It's not something you do once and then you're good to go. Every single day, like cleaning your teeth, you will always notice something that needs a little bit of work on. So I thought I'd just give you this for these are from the book, but they're really useful. So again, it's life of the choices that you're going to make. And in story, plot is the choices your character makes, so that you can just literally, when you're writing a story with children, go from he made this choice, when he does that, what happens, and another character will react to that choice, and you build a story from action and reaction. It's a super simple way of doing it. The one thing that it applies to, I put it in for us for the catalysts, but it's what we make in story is blindness to our flaws and strengths underpins most fiction. And on that story arc that you see, the character at the beginning doesn't know who they are. So it's always a journey to learn who they are. They're blind to their flaws, and they don't see their own strengths. And this, I think, is very useful. We don't apply story enough to our own life. I know you know this because I've seen it in my research on Ghanaian literature, but the protagonist is always an active character. And often in story, in writing, people make it very passive, and that doesn't really work. And the stronger you want something, the stronger the story. So it's a very good technique when you're doing character obstacle goal. Make that goal something like saving their little brother. It's something really important, and then you get a really good story. The bigger your obstacles, that's those rocks in the story river that turn your story, turn the action in different ways. The bigger you make those obstacles, the better your drama. And this is hard to believe, but the better your life will be too. And it's that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. it's always about who do you become. When you see a huge obstacle, you're almost like playing chess against it and thinking, who do I have to become to get around that? And you always think of creative ways. You begin not to take it personally. It makes you much more powerful. And the more powerful in 6 is, the more powerful your baddie, the antagonist, the stronger your main character is. So in life, the antagonist or the baddie can be 3 things. It's your internal doubts, your internal problem. It's the external. It could be a government, it could be a drought, the environment, and other people. It could be your mother, your father, your sister. And another thing that's very useful, this is a story screenwriting technique, and it's not taught enough in English, is a scene as an event. Something has to happen. So even if you want a glass of water and your brother's taken it away, you're creating the conflict between the characters. But if you don't have something happen, it's not a scene. And a scene is a very simple way for you, when you're telling your story to other catalysts or you're trying to inspire people, instead of telling it from beginning to end, your story, pick out 1 or 2 scenes from your life, like your most embarrassing moment, the moment you're most proud of, and you write it as a little scene with those 5 points I gave you at the beginning. So it'd be the trigger event, what caused it to happen, and you just complications, the obstacles, what you overcame, and the resolution. And that it's a very simple way to get into story. These are sort of quite advanced questions, but I just put them in there for your slide. When you're writing and you're teaching story, as opposed to, this is not the same as literacy, but you're always asking these questions. Whose story is this? And we forget, when it's our life, whose story is your life? It's not your mother's, your father's, it's yours. And it's something that it takes a long time for us to realize it's our life. And what is their flaw, the thing they fear being exposed? This is quite useful for us to examine. And when you can make your peace with this, whatever your flaw is, like I'm very untidy, I'm really bad at writing a structure. What don't they know? This creates suspense in story. So this is a technique in stories. Structure is always, when do you give information? So you might have the audience on a movie, they know something, but the character doesn't. And again, if you watch films with children, these are great things to play with them. You're always asking, what's the trigger event? What's the inciting incident in this scene? What started the scene off? And you start at that point in the story as close as possible. You're always thinking, what does your character want? What are the obstacles in their way? What is at stake? The more you make something at stake, like a baby will lose their life or they can't get into the school, the bigger the stake, the more we engage with the story. What do they learn? Is that thing about who do they become? And the questions you always so ask is, how and why do they do that? I can't see, how does the story end or the scene end? So those are the questions when at the BBC stuck on a script, those are the questions that they will ask. So let me just see what else I've got for you. So back to the story river is just for you to think about your own life in these ways. And you're always asking, who do you become? You're looking at the obstacles and it's empowering you. And these are the sort of questions that you'd ask children, you'd ask yourself, your students, what is your life story about? And this is something I'm using in my new book. And the old world order is coming down. And at the moment, we're in the middle of a new world. They haven't slightly come into, but this is what I see, Catalyst. You've got this vision for this new world, what you're doing with the education, and you're there, and it's how you're going to get to the other side. I think you'll know these, but I found these as a writer, because I'm not a teacher, super useful. I used to run the parenting program, and these are to know yourself, which we've talked about, appropriate expectations, which I know you have as teachers. So I find if I get very stressed or I'm tired, I've got an inappropriate expectation of what I can get done, or an inappropriate expectation of what a child can do. And the core thing you're always looking for is empathy. You're always, when they've done something naughty, you're always looking at, how can I empathize with that and get into their shoes? Positive discipline, this is transformative at my son's prep school. It's praise, again, it's what new teachers use all the time. But when you show a parent how to use positive discipline and we're getting them to look for things to praise their children, shouting and smacking just absolutely stops. So teaching a parent about these 4 steps, it was absolutely transformational at Dulwich Prep where I was working. So finally, it's just, and this is what I see you doing, you're thinking differently. This is Einstein. Identity, you have this incredible national identity in your name. And I see you as being sort of warriors, but with this very much the feminine brought in. And this is not a gender thing, but the difference between the masculine story in the past has been very active warrior, but in creativity and teaching, it's the yin that's allowing to receive. And we have both qualities in ourselves. And one of the things when you're writing, you don't put too many ingredients in the dish. And it's something I'm always telling writers to go look at MasterChef, because when you're making a dish, you don't open up the cupboards and pull everything in it. But we have a tendency as writers to do that. So finally, I'm just going back to you guys, and I think I'm almost finishing on time, is I'm just so impressed with what I've seen that you do. And I just completely hope that you're blown away. And tonight you just literally sit back and think, we have a writer from England that can't teach you anything, because as far as I can make it, not only do you know it, you're master storytellers, you're master catalysts, it's just awesome what you're doing. And just hats off. I've saved a few minutes if anyone wants to ask me a question. I don't know if you're there, or I can talk for another 5 minutes. What would you like, Kat?
Yes, I think we already have 3 questions in the chat.
Oh, I haven't seen. Could you read them to me?
Okay, so
Oh,
let me
hang on, let me have a
read
look.
the first one from
Yeah.
Yanfo Abdelkader. So he said, how can one write impact story when the impact is centered on one thing?
How can one write an impact story when the impact is centered on one thing?
Yes.
So one thing when you write a story, so this is very difficult for teachers in a way to get their heads around, is no one likes being told what to do. And this includes children. So all my friends are children's writers, and we're allowed to say one thing in a book. You sneak it in. So you almost put it seamlessly when you're telling a story, but instead of focusing on the one thing, you create the story, and it could be a scene from your life that shows the one thing. So you're not telling someone it's this, you're showing them, you're giving them an example. So maybe if you want, I don't know what an impact would be, but if you did want to be squished by an elephant, or you wanted to show girls how to use something to do with their periods or something and how to get around that problem. But in a story, when you're creating it, you're creating a story of entertainment, and you put less education in it. It goes in seamlessly so that they can hear it, and you design it around that. But the story structure remains the same. It's how that incident start off the story. It's who the character is. It's what they want. Those questions that we asked at the top: where are you? What do you want? Why do you want this? Why do you want to create that impact? Who's impacting it on you? Ask those 5 questions, and they're basic journalism questions. But when you're writing a story, it's super, super helpful. And when you're telling the story, if you're doing it in person, and again, this is what you'll do better than most writers in the West, is use your body, your smiles, your energy, your big heart, the connection to community, these things that we're losing in the West. But as far as I can see, you still have it massively in Ghana, and they're very important. Does that answer your question, or do you need me more on that? Mention the place of being in your body. How can we tell them stories from a group that reconciles there with thee? So this, I would say, this is the hero, the difference between the hero and the heroine. The heroine, you're taking, it's a collective energy. It's the feminine. It's receiving. It's giving. It's allowing people to receive. And you can rewrite it as the we. But you're always thinking about your relationship with your reader, the audience. You're always looking for what they want from it. You have an appropriate expectation of how much that story you can create. You might have to do it in micro little crumbs. You might have to use repetition and go over and over it. You might, as you know, I mean, your teachers, you're way better at this than I am. Could I cause what tension motivates and shape action in a story? Yes. So these are, again, you use those obstacles that I mentioned at the earlier. Tension in a story is conflict. It's often managing information and story structure. So it's what you don't know. Hitchcock would say, you don't tell somebody there's a bomb under the table. The reader might know that. If you're watching a film with somebody, you could show, we all know we're on the edge of our seat because we know something's going to happen, but the character doesn't know. So it's called withholding information, and how you structure that with mystery. When you withhold, you tease information. When you're doing a story structure, at the end of the scene, you have something called a hook or a cliffhanger. You're leaving with a big question like, will he survive this? Will he fall off the bike? Will his dad beat him up? Whatever the question is, but you create a question that they want to answer, and then you're keeping them attached to the story. With motivation, I would go back and look at the Pixar slide. It's those things of what you want, and having great escalating stakes, so that if you don't get what your character wants or what you want, that there's a very high price to be paid. And action, the shape, I covered that earlier in the talk. It's got a structure, a movement, and you have, for me, it's fascinating. You have the identical structure in Ghanaian literature, and it comes, it's the hero's journey, and we change that very much. With modern stories now, they call it the heroine's journey. Please do you have more questions? Oh, so anyway, yeah, does anybody have more questions? The other thing I was just going to say with story that's different from teaching English is a lot of what you teach in English, certainly in England, it's actually bad writing for storytelling, which I know doesn't help. So you don't, in storytelling, use a lot of adjectives, passive tenses. You don't show off what you know. You're always using active language, engaging language. You're showing examples with like metaphors and stories and your myths. And I would definitely recommend watching, that request to have more films. It's a great way to understand story structure with children. And they start watching it, and they'll watch less telly too, because it ruins story for them. But anyway, I hope that helps. Honestly, you are so expert. I literally struggle to think of anything to tell you that I know that you don't already know and already masters of. So thank you.
Can I ask just a really simple final question? It just comes
Yeah,
back to, sorry, Sadhu, just coming back to this whole idea of relating what you've said to really trying to show the impact that all these catalysts are creating at their spots.
I would say you're doing that I think you're doing it brilliantly when you have those tiny little segments. So you have somebody saying, I see you show somebody playing with their children with numbers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in awe of what you're doing. You're doing it superbly, Kat. You're doing
it. For example, those videos I did last week on the spot visits, and I'm doing it without a clear framework in my mind. We're just playing around with different things. But for the catalysts and the communities, like a simple framework when someone says to them, "Oh, why should I support the spot? Why is this spot important?" Just how do you bringing all this thing about humanity and emotion and leading from the heart? How can they bring that into their response?
Well, it is bringing in. to know why you want something. So those questions that you need to know who you are, why do you want an education spot there? What do you feel passionately about? So it might be just to have less pregnancies because that's such a high fertility rate. You tell the story. I mean, it's always the character obstacle is the simplest structure. So if you want a goal, you want this, what are the obstacles? And then you can find the obstacles quite clearly from listening to people. The one thing I would say why driving change is a very masculine energy. It's very yang energy. People don't like to be changed. So one way of doing it is actually to listen to your obstacles with huge compassion and respect for their view. And you are the person that's modeling the change. If you're finding you're hitting a brick wall with people saying no, the way in, oh, tell me more, what do you think about? Because you can turn it around, but you force, it's basic physics. If you're forcing against someone that's saying, why do I need this? You're going to create more force. And I was wondering whether you see that in what you're doing. So a softer way is the heroine's journey. It is being much more respectful to that person, asking them what they think, and then you can very quite cleverly turn it around. It's because I'm writing story, we're not teachers. You honestly are the experts at the cat. You're far better at this than I am to think of 3 things that it would be this, this, and this, but it needs to come from their heart because every single community is different. But it is to have that sense. It's not that the arrogance, I'm right, this will be better if we do it this way. That's not going to work. It's just human nature. It won't work. It's having a respect and bringing everybody with you. And energetically, what I'm seeing in the work I'm doing for the new book, when you change, when you're peaceful in your heart, the energies, it makes a huge difference. So it starts, if you want to change your community, it starts with you, which is why you do the work, to know who you are, why you want things, what triggers you, what makes you angry, what makes you frustrated, what makes you want to give up, and to be very decent and kind to yourself, that there are days when you probably just want to pull the blanket over your head and think, oh, too much, and to respect that, and just next day you get up again. But that's what I was wondering about that, because change is so difficult and people don't want to be changed, that there's subtle ways of doing it, but what you don't want to do is fight them.
Yeah,
does that help at all?
That's a great note to end on. I really think that whole concept of just being the change yourself and role modeling it is such a core part of EduSpots philosophy, and just being consistent on the small things day in, day out. And that in itself is a better sort of opening for a conversation with somebody. If you want to get a big opportunity or funding or books or something, it's not going to them always with a one-off story. It's just consistently day out and day in, day out, delivering what you believe in with your values as an individual and as a team, which is, I think, what EduSpots does very well. But often that story, that story with a bit of spice can be a way to draw someone in different ways. I'm going to hand back to
just tell them stories of your own. The only thing, just before you go, the research is, it's not a little thing when you change yourself, because on the map of consciousness, your power, when you change inside and you're calm and you're peaceful and you're kind and you decide you're never going to steal, all these things that you make a decision in your life about, you'll be shocked how much people will change, and you will suddenly walk back into the community and somebody that was a problem last week isn't a problem today. You'll be amazed. It's powerful. It's not little things. It's a huge thing. If you can do that you always meet a stubborn person with kindness and respect for exactly their whole story that's gotten this point that they're blocking you, and just kindness all the way. You're doing such an amazing, I can't even see how you could do it better, actually. What I can see,
if you're inside the organization, I'm sure you could.
Well, you're just showing it as it's incredible what you're doing, and so sophisticated in your storytelling techniques that you're already using, and your leadership and the sense of following. It's really sophisticated what you're teaching and offering and showing and sharing. It's amazing.
Thanks, Lucy. Back to Seydou.
Yeah, thank you, Seydou.
Wow, thank you so much, first of all, for the compliment, Lucy. I think all of us on the call are very grateful for that. We are very, very grateful. And then again, thanks so much for making time to impact this knowledge into us, because as agents of change, we need to be able to tell our own stories, not just stories, but impactful stories. And we believe that this session has been very beneficial to each one of us. We are much charged to tell our own story. And then we also have a challenge this month, which is on impactful storytelling. So this is a further guide for us to be able to put in a very good challenge in that regard. So we thank you so much for the time spent with us. We are much grateful, and we hope to have you another day.
Thank you so much. You're doing great. I'm so proud of all of you. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave you to your... Thank you. Thanks, Kat. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lucy.